Previously on Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney.
So, Mr. Bruchel, you're a journalist?
Me? Look, let me state one thing for the record here.
Yes.
I'm the interviewer. You understand, yeah? I'm the one asking the questions here. End quote.
Okay. Apollo, I'm scared.
So am I, Trucy. Just don't make eye contact. Hello, I'm Unca Crunk. Welcome back to Ace Attorney and day one of the trial of, what was her name again? Vera Misham. October 8th, 9:48 a.m., District Court, Defendant Lobby, number 6. Hello. Good morning.
So, you're Vera, right?
I'm Trucy Wright. That's right with a W, but not right?
We're on your side.
You can tell us anything.
Please. Good morning.
She speaks.
Not bad. But I think you'd do better with a little smile, you know?
Trucy!
You're so pretty. You need to sell yourself, you know?
Trucy, did you just tell a woman that she would be prettier if she smiled?
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Oh my God. Yeah, you're Phoenix's daughter, all right. Trucy, let's take it easy for starters. Oh?
Thank you for taking my case.
Okay, well, that's a start, I guess. There she goes with the nail polish again. Oh, is that a nail polish bottle? Okay. Weird.
That's great, really, it's so cultured. Want to try?
She's not wearing nail polish.
Ooh, really?
Ugh, girls. And you're wearing gloves! The victim, Drew Misham, was a forger. And a stolen painting was found in his studio. Life of crime, really. And maybe one that led to his death. October 8th, 10 a.m., District Court, courtroom number 3. Well, we will now begin the trial of Vera Misham.
Is the judge okay? His voice is all raspy and he's looking around and all nervous like.
The repercussion of today's trial will most likely be felt for a long time, and may indeed alter our legal system forever. Today is a test of the jurist system, and the first step toward a new order in our courts.
Daddy's secret mission!
The jurist will function like a jury. It is hoped their inclusion will help the courts to better reflect the people's will.
Why aren't there any jurists in the courtroom?
3 closed-circuit cameras watch this courtroom at all times. The jurists have access to everything that transpires. And we couldn't afford to have new elements drawn just to have some jurors in this one case. Jurists, judge well and judge cool. Now see here, Prosecutor Gavin. I was going to say that. My apologies, Herr Judge. Jurist, today, judge today's trial coolly, if you would be so kind.
The jurists are unbound by the letter of the law. They don't affect the trial with evidence, but by their feelings. And we're about to find out just what effect they're going to have.
Very well, Prosecutor Gavin, the details of the case, if you would. The victim is the painter Drew Misham. He was killed in his own studio. His coffee was poisoned. By whom, you ask? By none other than the defendant, Vera Misham.
There wasn't any poison in the coffee.
Achtung. Someone has been doing their homework. Indeed, poison was not present in the coffee, but on the mug itself.
The mug? Oh, residue was found on the rim, I see.
The autopsy report describes the manner of our victim's death.
The court accepts this as evidence.
Death by atroquinine poisoning. Estimated time of death, 9 to 9:30 p.m.
According to this report, the victim's death was caused by poisoning.
A chemical compound that does not occur naturally. Lethal dosage is a mere 0.002 milligrams. A touch of atroquinine in the body is the touch of the Reaper's scythe.
Very well, Prosecutor Gavin. You may present your witness.
I have for you today a simple man for a simple case. A man who witnessed the murder in its entirety. That journalist, no doubt. The witness will state his name and occupation.
You're right. Well, for starters, my name's Spark Bruchel. My job is a lone observer of the world.
In other words, a freelance journalist, right?
Damn! If you don't mind, I'd like to state something here for the record.
Yes, Mr. Bruchel?
I dislike conclusions, specifically the aspect of jumping to conclusions. Preconceptions make park sandbox of endless desert waste, end quote.
But you are a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday.
Well, that's true, yes. But you must understand, I stand before you today, a man with a dream. I'm offering you my testimony in exchange for exclusive rights to the story. Scoop turns Mr. Bruchel into that Mr. Bruchel, end quote.
Let's hear your testimony then, shall we?
A simple case, eh, Gavin? For me, the jury is still out. Witness testimony.
The journalist's story. I visited the studio around 9 o'clock that night to do the interview. The first outsider to enter the atelier. Journalistic history made, end quote. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happened next? Star falls, end quote. No one else entered the room beside her the whole time.
That does sound like a simple case. Unless you were the one who poisoned him.
What are you saying, Judge?
Need I remind you the cameras are rolling today? I felt the need to be a bit dramatic.
You didn't do it, did you?
You do a thing like that? Come on! That's like newsmaker making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. I know wild accusations for courtroom, end quote.
Rock indeed. Prosecutor Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him.
Very well, Mr. Justice, your cross-examination, please.
Cross-examination, start.
I visited the studio around 9 o'clock that night to do the interview.
Oh, wait, back.
Hold it!
9 o'clock at night? Isn't that a little late for an interview?
If the great painter Drew Misham says come at 9 o'clock, believe you me, I go at 9 o'clock. The first, as it turned out, my last interview with such a prolific painter.
Right. Can you tell us what it was like when you arrived?
The first outsider to enter the atelier. Journalistic history made, end quote.
Hold it!
You were the first reporter ever in Drew's studio?
Posterity will look back on that night as a turning point in journalistic history. A basically insignificant step for all mankind, but a giant step for that Bruchel guy, end quote.
If no one on the outside ever had access to the studio, then it would serve to reason that the deed was done by an insider. By which he means Vera did it. So, how did this epoch-making interview go?
His daughter brought us coffee right after we started.
Hold it!
Would you mind being a little more specific?
Ooh-wee, let me tell you, I enjoy a cuppa. In fact, it all began when I was in 3rd grade. No, wait, 4th grade.
That's not what I meant.
I believe I know what hair forehead is driving at. This coffee the victim was served. Did anyone other than the defendant touch it?
Right, that. That's what I was going to say, really.
Well, now, if you've got a question to ask, you'd best straight up ask it. That's what I tell all the new recruits, several times if necessary. Right for a grade schooler. That's my motto. Which isn't to say I can only write grade school level, mind you.
Who touched the coffee?
I don't know. I was in the back looking at the studio's equipment when she served it.
And what happened next?
And you know what happened next. Star Falls, end quote.
Hold it!
What's this about a star falling?
Star Falls, huh? It's like an old telegram. Send money, over. Zowie, you don't know? That's like a journalism code word. An important personage passes away. A star falls. Get it?
But there's no gravity in space, is there? I wouldn't think stars could fall, really. Does this matter?
Oh boy, this is good stuff. Good stuff. How about star breaks? Nah, like sponge. I know. Star dies. Nah, lacks imagination. Of course, you could go with Drew dies, straight to the point. I like it.
I think we need to hear about something a little more substantial. The star's coffee. You say Mr. Misham had the coffee too, but did you actually see him drink the coffee?
Of course. He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins is bigger, end quote. I live in a man sees dog eat world and writes about it world, yet. I guess I can't say I saw him drink it, really. He had one so-called sip, if that. Man puts lips to mug, drinks, end quote.
That poison is quite virulent, I hear.
My stomach did a so-called somersault. Since I gulped down that coffee without so much as a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something's there. Some kind of so-called trick. Anyone want to venture a guess, for the record?
Does this guy have a pause button?
Well, Mr. Justice, did you find that testimony valuable?
Yes.
The victim drank his coffee, then immediately fell over.
Oh, yes. You can go to the press with that one.
Your Honor, this is a vital piece of information. Emma herself said that atroquinine takes at least 15 minutes to do anything. Please add it to the testimony.
Very well, the witness will add this to his testimony.
Vital! Right. He had one sip, if that. The next moment he was on the floor.
So he either took a sip or he didn't and then fell over?
Oh yes, indubitably. Just like that. Wham bam.
So Mr. Misham drank the coffee and fell over immediately.
I think Rochelle's telling the truth, too. Should I get him to talk about something else?
The moment of death.
About when Mr. Misham passed away.
Oh boy, what a scene that was. He puts his coffee mug down with a crash, right?
Yes, and then...
Then the cold finger of death touches his spine. Life's flame sputters and fails. So cold was that touch, he could do naught but tremble uncontrollably. Actually, life's flame is a little tired. Life's river froze over. Yes, that's a go.
I think he's starting this article already.
Could you describe that a little more simply?
Well, as you can imagine, I was pretty surprised. He hit the floor, as they say. Our procedure is a final performance, end quote.
Atroquinine paralyzes the central nervous system. The body arches back like a bow. The limbs tremble. That's quite enough of that. Some of us want to be able to sleep tonight.
Oh, yeah? Well, I want details. Lots of juicy details.
For that, you can listen to our last year's hit single, Atroquinine My Love, by the Governors, available at all major music outlets. The point here is that the victim died of atroquinine poisoning. Well, Mr. Justice, how did you find that testimony?
Very important. Well, as an account of the moment of the victim's death, I'd say it's very important. Please add it to the testimony.
Very well, the court requests the witness add this account to his testimony.
Those spasms, that was definitely death by poison.
You say it was definitely death by poison. How can you be so sure?
Hey, look, I'm a journalist. I've seen a lot of things. And I've had more than my share of experiences with so-called poisonings. Man eats fishy fish, goes bye-bye, end quote.
Food poisoning doesn't count. Should I get him to talk about something else? How about, sure. How about your coffee? So you drank the coffee that Vera served you too?
Of course, when someone offers you coffee, you drink it. That's what my old boss always used to say. Never did get what he meant by it, though.
But you're still alive, which is to say, you didn't die.
Of course not. No point falling before you're a star, end quote.
That's not exactly what I was getting at. What were you getting at then? You know the poison was on the rim, not in the coffee.
Oh, yes, yes. There were 2 cups on the tray she brought. And one of those cups had Drew's signature painted on the side.
No chance the guest would take that one by mistake, I guess.
Well, Mr. Justice, was that testimony important?
Not really. So Rochelle drank the coffee too. Doesn't look like this is going to lead to much.
Very well, please continue with the testimony.
No one else entered the room besides her the whole time.
Can you say that for sure?
For sure? Sure, I'm sure. Drew's studio isn't a big place, kiddo. I'd know it if someone else had come in.
What if they had been hiding in there from before? Okay, that was silly. Even if someone had been hiding in the studio, they hardly could have poisoned that mug without anyone noticing.
You think I, Spark Michelle, would miss something as obvious as that? No way. He sure makes it sound exciting. I guess that's his job.
There's only one moment we need to focus on, really.
The moment when Mr. Drew Bisham died?
Exactly. There has to be something there. Okay, how about here? Traces of the slow-acting deadly poison.
Objection!
This evidence clearly reveals a contradiction in that statement, Your Honor.
How exactly are the evidence and the statement just now related?
They aren't, are they? Okay, wrong statement.
Not at all. Mr. Justice, please think the facts over before making accusations.
I don't think that won me any points with the judge. Okay, I think I screwed up.
Hold it!
Okay, you say it was definitely death by poison, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's journalist, poisonings, fishy fish. Okay, food poisoning doesn't count. Stars coffee. Okay, you say Mr. Misham had the coffee too, but did you actually see him drink the coffee?
Of course. He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger, end quote. I live in a man sees dog eat world and there's something, and yet again, can't see that he saw it. He had one so-called sip, if that. Man puts lips mug, drinks. My stomach did a so-called somersault. Okay.
Wait, what? Okay, the victim drank his coffee, then immediately fell over. This is where I need to present the mug. Okay, yeah, vital information added to the testimony. Okay.
He had one sip, if that. The next moment he was on the floor.
Okay, here. You know what I have a problem with? A particular property of the poison used, atroquinine. Oh, Prosecutor Gavin was quite clear about the poison. A lethal dosage of 0.002 milligrams paralyzes the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Justice, would be reduced to a quivering pile.
Why are you using me as an example?
Unfortunately, we weren't told everything. There was a vital omission in Prosecutor Gavin's information. An omission? Atroquinine is as virulent as he says. But death doesn't come upon ingestion, not immediately. That's because atroquinine is slow-acting. Slow-acting? According to one forensic scientist,
it's one of the most virulent poisons, but is absorbed into the body astonishingly slowly. It takes at least 15 minutes from the time of ingestion for adverse effects to show.
if we suppose that the moment Mr. Misham sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, then he would still have had time left to enjoy his last cup of chow. Order! Order! What is the meaning of this? If what the defense says is correct, why, that contradicts the entire testimony we've just heard. Well, Mr. Bruchel, anything to say on the record?
Slow acting, S-L-O-W-A-C-T. Okay, it was virulent, all right. Even then, it had already begun digging its claws into the journalist. He's working on a scoop. Ugh.
Objection!
It's Bruchel, huh? Herr Bruchel, let's take a trip back down memory lane.
Eh?
Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital.
You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion, end quote.
I admit it does cause a problem if he died when you say he died. I would be forced to say auf Wiedersehen to my simple case. And you would be forced to say farewell to your article.
Come again?
You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reporters will pick up on the scent. And you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye.
Scoop! 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 Look, wait. Just wait a second. Just 1 second.
We're waiting. Out with it.
I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival of recollection, end quote. A story of survival, end quote.
Eternally, utterly confused, end quote.
Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I had heard of poison that takes its sweet time, see?
But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently. Mr. Bruchel, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened?
You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction, end quote, you might say.
Or I still have no idea what you're talking about, end quote, I might say.
I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee.
The coffee wasn't poisoned, you dumbass.
Order! As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony that Mr. Misham died the instant after he drank.
Of course, I'm standing by my testimony and my dream of exclusive rights to this story.
I suppose there was too much to hope for.
What was?
Of course, he wouldn't choose a simple case. Not him.
Him?
Phoenix Wright. Who else?
Ian?
Achtung, Herr Bruchel. Report for us, if you would. What is it that you noticed?
This court is a critical trial of the juris system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed.
Witness testimony. What Bruchel noticed. When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note?
A suicide note.
Yes, he had this look upon his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation, end quote. Suicide? Oh, poor Mr. Misham. But that means Severe is innocent.
Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview?
Oh.
Very well, you may as well begin your cross-examination.
Cross-examination, start.
Okay.
When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Misham was at his desk.
Was there anyone at the studio other than Mr. Misham?
Well, his daughter Vera, of course.
Was anyone besides Mr. Misham and Vera present?
Not a single one, not a cat, not a rat, not even a mouse.
The only person who didn't belong to that studio there was you, wasn't it, Mr. Bruchel?
I know what you're doing. I know your game. Attorney uses classic Ramsden phenomenon ploy, end quote.
If you intend to suggest that this reporter is a suspect, I am sure you also intend to present evidence supporting that assertion, correct? In the meantime, let's move along, shall we?
He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope.
Hold it!
So he put the letter away when he saw you.
Early reporter gets worm, end quote. That's my secret.
I'm not sure I follow.
It's the night of the interview. I arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the doors opens, and I barge in.
Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry, really?
Mr. Misham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter into the yellow envelope as fast as he could.
Yellow envelope?
I know a secret when I spot one, and that was one.
It does seem significant. Well, Mr. Justice,
I wonder. It does have the ring of something important.
Yeah.
The defense finds this testimony vital, Your Honor.
very well, please add it to your testimony then.
Why not? My accountant, why not? My account comes free of charge. It was a yellow envelope. I heard it was left at the crime scene.
And you saw him seal this yellow envelope with the letter.
Hey, don't look at me like that. I saw what I saw. Apollo, you think this might be?
Our big break, yeah. What I need is to show some decisive evidence now.
I thought nothing of it at the time, of course.
You didn't think anything might be wrong at the time?
Hey, when I go in for an interview, that's what I'm there to do. Interviewer finds looking more effective than caring, end quote.
So what about now? Thinking back on it, did you sense anything strange in Mr. Misham's behavior?
Well, yeah. That's why I'm telling you all this to begin with.
Very well, continue with your testimony.
Now that I think about it, what if what he was writing was a suicide note?
I'm not even going to dignify that with a objection. All right, yellow envelope. It was not yellow. It was red.
Objection!
Well, the enclosed envelope might have been yellow. As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope! Prosecutor Gavin. Yes. Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no. But, Hair Forehead, it's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess, but not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago.
Well, Mr. Bruchel?
I can explain that. Drew, right, he wanted to get that letter into an envelope pronto. Get it out of sight of my beady eyes, yes? So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away.
And what about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump?
Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim?
That night, the victim put a letter he had been writing in a red envelope. No. That's impossible.
I like your expression.
So full of confidence. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope with the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham.
No?
Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself.
I've been scooped.
Order! 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 Mr. Bruchel, can you explain this to the court?
Oh, my. How could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots. End quote.
I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Bruchel.
Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something.
His desk drawer?
Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp, end quote.
Oh my God, I was right.
A stamp, whatever for?
Well, to mail his letter, what else? And then, why, yes, I think I saw him putting it in his letterbox. Yes, it was a yellow envelope, and he put it in that box.
Well, apparently this yellow letter has nothing to do with the case.
Oh, how I wish it did. Just think if that were a suicide note. What a story. Star writes suicide note in front of reporter. Falls. End quote.
Ahem. As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said,
Yes, Your Honor.
it makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope.
Mr. Tree, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the envelope, 3 days.
$100,000 is quite a good deal of money. So this was from 7 years ago, Ja?
So, am I finished? Here, I mean. Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing.
Hello? I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that, rather unique face.
Come on. Attorney has active imagination, little else, end quote.
Even I noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. You know, I'm starting to understand what all this perceiving stuff is about.
Judge has active imagination, end quote.
Please continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story.
Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here, usually.
Witness testimony.
The scent of a story. Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview. Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote. The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare.
So you threatened to go to the press with this story. That's how you got your interview? Blackmail?
Well, yes. No. That I wasn't exactly black. I'm not.
Something wrong, Mr. Bouchel?
Look, this is my story, my tip, and the journalist info is livelihood. End quote.
I see.
Well, you have me chatting away in here. What's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could be going to press while I'm going to waste.
The court feels your pain, Mr. Bouchel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace.
A certain case 7 years ago. Wait, 7 years ago? Cross-examination, start.
Actually, it took a bit of work to get a thumbs up on the interview.
The victim, Drew Misham, had an aversion to reporters.
Boy, I guess not even my considerable charms did much for him. Until I finally got my thumbs up, that is.
Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit for us?
Reporter leverages story, gets his interview, end quote.
Exactly what sort of story was this?
Oh, a little one, like I said. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing in between, end quote. I might have suggested I had a lead on this particular story, but I didn't threaten or cajole or nothing, honest.
So a suggestion was enough to get an interview. Mr. Misham must have really wanted to keep it under wraps.
The story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago.
A certain case 7 years ago. Tell us, what case?
Let me state one thing, Mr. Attorney, and you can quote me on this. I can't talk about that case. But why not? It's about journalistic pride and staunchness and credibility and connections. Journalists reveal sources only over his dead body, end quote. So, what'll it be? Gonna strangle me? Dead men don't tell tales, Mr. Attorney.
Oh, he sounds pretty determined not to talk. Our chances of breaking his will aren't looking good.
That red envelope probably has something to do with it.
On the one hand, we have your story, and on the other, this letter. What makes you think the two are related?
No, I was just saying it's possible. I call it reporter's intuition, end quote. Hey, I say a lot of things. You gonna pick all of them apart? Be my guest.
All of them? No. Just the incredibly suspicious ones. So, most of them.
I see. Anything else to add about Mr. Misham?
Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare.
Just how amazing was Mr. Misham's talent?
Ooh-wee, boy. I mean, hey, he's a star, man, a star. The flow of his brush is like a great undulating river across the canvas. Artist paints light up the studio like a sun. Ingwa.
This guy is full of wacky gestures. But that one just now was wackier than usual. He looks kind of nervous to me, Apollo. Definitely. I'm sensing something different than before here. Maybe it's time to bring out you-know-what. That testimony left a bad taste in my mouth. It all makes sense. Nothing jumps out as ridiculous. I wonder what this story he's talking about is. It must have been good to get an interview with a famous recluse like that. Something powerful enough to drag Drew Misham out of hiding. I wonder. Maybe it has something to do with Mr. Misham's art? Okay. So let's perceive. Oh, hang on. All right, let's hear that again. There it is.
Gotcha!
Mr. Bruchel, you're hiding something. Okay, I screwed up. Don't you all something like that? You'll give a guy a heart attack. Sorry, it's just the way you were moving just now is particularly suspicious. What's that supposed to mean? So usually I'm just sort of averagely suspicious? Sorry, my mistake. You're fine. I know I'm onto something here. Time to focus. Okay, so perceive. Right there.
Gotcha!
There it is. Sweat much, Mr. Bruchel? Yeah, well, a man can't help his glands, you know. It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets. You're hiding something about his talent. Ridiculous. Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens that I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. Right there.
Take that!
This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is that it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries. That is all, Your Honor. Everyone, please, everyone. Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop.
Forgery. That's a serious crime.
Drew Misham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back.
Another art meaning forgery.
Drew Misham was talented, all right. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about. Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumor started circulating 7 years ago.
7 years ago? So, are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for?
Exactly. Forged evidence nets tidy profit, end quote.
Order! 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 Wait, it's like our victim was living a double life.
Aha! This is my chance. So, the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about.
Objection!
This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation.
Objection!
But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here.
Objection!
But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course.
Yeah. The only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews.
Mr. Bushell, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen.
So the way you're talking about my journalism is rock solid. Journalism so solid you could stand an elephant on it. End quote.
In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over.
Apollo, what's he talking about?
The cross-examination showed Mr. Bushell didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there's no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera. That's what. This next testimony is our last chance.
Mr. Bushell, your testimony, please.
Witness testimony.
The interview, the recap. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during that interview was that mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
A nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without room for doubt.
Oh, shucks. Do you really think so?
I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination.
Right. I still have one trump card left to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it. Cross-examination, start!
The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant.
Hold it!
But that doesn't prove Vera poisoned it.
Objection!
How many times have we heard that one, Hair Forehead? The poison reached its victim via that coffee mug. And from where did that coffee mug come, Not to beat a dead horse again and again, but perhaps you could fill us in?
I'm on it. You need a horse beat? I'm your man. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's...
Whoa.
Hold it!
And you witnessed her pouring the coffee.
Of course I didn't witness it. When she came in with that tray, the coffee was already poured and steaming.
But let's not forget, the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed.
What?
That last part was just a little joke.
I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with this coffee mug. I need to find another weak spot in this case. I'm getting to it, Apollo. I always press on everything. You know this, man.
The only thing that touched Drew's lips during that interview was that mug.
Hold it!
You're sure about that?
Well, to be really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time.
One of those candies might have been poisoned.
Yet, at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room. And no mint residue was found.
Yeah.
It was a long shot anyway.
Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee? Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof...
The possibility is there. I can feel it, just maybe not prove it. Not yet. And possibility isn't going to cut it. Not now. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than that coffee. And I can prove it! Proof is possible. I gotta risk it.
Oh, excellent. Let's see your proof then. Please show us your evidence. What evidence shows that the victim wasn't poisoned via his coffee mug?
There it is.
Take that!
Do I know? Must I explain this over and over? We don't need possibilities, hair, forehead. We need proof.
Yeah, I know that.
You should also know that every proof has its moment. Perhaps you're a bit early. I can tell you what we know at this point. The victim put nothing to his mouth but that coffee mug.
Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything.
But first things first, I'd better uncover the weak spot before I try to strike again. On with the cross-examination.
But... And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing.
Hold it!
Letter did. Not one thing, you're sure?
Yep, sure can be. Well, with one exception.
One exception? What?
Journalist Mark Bruchel does interview, leaves studio, end quote. Come on! It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still.
Did something leave that studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? Just one thing. I think one thing might have very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Misham. Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Then let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene.
Take that!
This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A litter box? What did Mr. Bruchel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter.
Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true.
Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared.
Objection!
Yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? Here's the point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well, then the witness will add this to his testimony.
You got it.
I still think this fails to change anything here, Forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for.
A letter was put in the post from the studio, but I hardly think that matters.
Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio, and you were hiding that fact from us.
Yes, well, actually.
I don't argue the possibility that a letter disappeared from this studio, but Herr Forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right. How Mr. Misham was poisoned, I know. But Mr. Bruchel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. And what he's told us means something entirely different now, I'm starting to think.
Let's keep thinking, Apollo. Clear. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter.
Hold it!
You say clearly as though it were obvious. But this claim that the defendant poisoned the victim is merely conjecture.
Yes, well, you see, in my business, it's all about making the most ridiculous things sound right. A bad habit, I know. Yes, well, actually, I guess this is more a case of ridiculous journalist sounds wrong, end quote.
The court is forced to agree with you. Please refrain from wild conjecture.
Understood loud and clear.
Yeah, if only I could believe that. What do you think, Apollo? Everything he's saying seems so not flawed. Well, that's kind of what you want from a testimony, really. I need to keep my eye on what matters. How and why was Drew Misham killed? Beer poured the coffee, that's not going to change. But if that coffee didn't kill him, I need to find what did and prove it. Okay, so the stamp, but how do I, let's see, this right here.
Objection!
The witness's statement is clearly faulty, Your Honor. I'm sorry, but I can see nothing faulty. Unfortunately, I will have to penalize you, Mr. Justice.
Damn it!
That stamp, the stamp, the stamp, the stamp, the stamp, the stamp.
Ah!
Press again, maybe? You're sure about that?
Well, to be really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time.
One of those candies might have been poisoned. Yet at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room, and no mint residue was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee?
Yes!
Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof,
I've already done this!
a possibility is there. I can feel it, just maybe not proven, not yet. And possibility isn't going to cut it, not now. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than coffee, and I can prove it! Here goes nothing. And again with the guitar. Yes, proof. I have proof. Ready to give you proof. What did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope. Why didn't this happen earlier? I guess I had to press on the thing about the letterbox first. Damn it.
I saw him writing a letter, I did.
Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume? Of course. Which means that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp? As we all know, stamps come with dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp.
Objection!
No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age.
Objection!
Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all.
Objection!
Okay, so he licked the stamp. But wait, how does that explain the actual quinine on the rim of the coffee mug?
Objection!
If he licked the back of a poison stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yeah? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, huh? Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing, it was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself! Order! 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 But that does it? Recall, if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. Is it sinking in yet? You have something to add, Mr. Burchell?
Uh-oh, his nose is picking up another scent.
As I believe I mentioned earlier. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Misham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp. A so-called postage stamp, end quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one.
Maybe he just run out.
Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps. Not a single one.
I got it. I got him.
That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison?
Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Actually, I can.
Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp?
It's about damn time.
Take that!
Well, that certainly is a cute little frame. And by little, I mean really little.
It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection. So what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. Now, where are you? You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important.
Missing something?
Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame.
Atroquinine residue.
What?
Why wasn't I told about this?
The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most.
You aren't saying...
Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps?
Order! 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 The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible! Prosecutor Gavin,
Why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck.
You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see?
what, Mr. Burchell? And please stop jittering around like that.
The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too, end quote.
So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him.
Objection!
Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the governor's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail.
The mail?
Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew read letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed.
Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice.
A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. I hope this is it.
Take that!
Isn't this the envelope, the one from 7 years ago?
Think about the text of the letter again. Mr. Drew, okay. There were 2 pages in the envelope.
This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor.
Oh! In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison on the stamp, lick, gasp, ink well.
Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked?
He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox.
15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between fixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. I'm guessing it was a very nice stamp and he decided to use one that was in his drawer. Such a splendid imagination you have here, Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So, this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago, Ja? Is that what you'd have us believe? Really?
Well, it is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility.
Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? Poison stamp in this envelope? A stamp that then became the murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Ah! It was 7 years ago and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence, I see. Very well, I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fraulein, Clavier.
What? You're supposed to be in jail! What? Oh, Emma. What the hell just happened? Well, like my Christoph Gavin impression? Did I sound like him?
No, you sounded like Phoenix Wright.
Don't quit your day job.
Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fraulein Detective?
Someone had to come dig you out of all the mess you're making of this case.
Mess?
You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in that envelope easy.
Care to explain yourself, Fraulein Detective?
Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right?
That's right! The poison detection spray! Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of the court. Oh, there it is. Well, would you look at that?
No mistaking it. That's atroquinine residue.
I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Now, 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last.
Objection!
Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago?
Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Misham figured it out.
Figured what out?
He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp.
And put his decisive evidence in a frame? You're still here?
Can I make a statement here on the record? Hey, Spark, raise your toothbrush shell. Claim the scoop is mine. Drew Mission killed in cold blood. By sender of 7-year-old letter, ink quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay, ink quote.
Order! 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 I see no room for further arguments here. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife, end quote.
Uh-oh. I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge.
I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant.
Apollo! I think we just won.
Very well, this court finds the defendant.
Objection!
Damn it.
Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets for governor's shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. Boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Herr Forehead's claim.
Contradiction?
A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did?
Explain that. He must have realized it was poisoned.
Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sensed a trap and put the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why, 7 years later, did he use that stamp on the night of the murder?
He thought it was a pretty stamp. He didn't suspect anything, and he wanted to keep the stamp.
Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot? He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprang the trap on himself? Damn it, he's right. Someone took it out of the frame and put it in his desk. Well, I admit this is all quite shocking myself. It does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years.
Did you, Apollo?
I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you.
Objection!
Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope?
The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? Ugh. I see no proof that such a thing ever existed.
Objection!
What about the atroquinine residue, huh?
Oh, I agree. That does seem to be atroquinine residue. But, Herr Forehead, it's certainly no stamp.
Sir, yeah, but...
Even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all. I believe we've come to a conclusion. Again.
Apollo, we were wrong the whole time.
I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year. Mr. Justice? Yes, Your Honor. Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison atroquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope. An envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right, which means there's a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The traces of atroquinine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us?
The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake.
A fake clue. Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, ja?
The fake clue that's thrown us off the poison's trail is none other than... Damn it. I don't know. The frame.
This frame is the fake clue?
Without a doubt, Your Honor.
Objection!
Wasn't it you who presented this evidence to the court?
Ow. Hold on a second, Apollo. The poison on the envelope, that frame, and the coffee mug. They're all connected somehow. Oh, right.
I can hear it already. It looks like the fake was you, Hair Forehead.
We can flog ourselves later, Apollo. Now's the time for thinking.
Okay, the fake clue that's thrown us off the poison's trail is none other than... Well, that makes no sense. The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand.
I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. All that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself.
Objection!
Congratulations, you've completely lost me.
You've lost me too.
So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger. It makes a good story, I'll give you that.
The fake clue, fakes, forgeries. I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake?
Come again.
7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why?
That's what I want to know.
Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Where is Drew Misham's wife?
Here we are again. The victim was a fake.
One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's two forgers, and one of them was a fake. All that stuff on the other side of the studio hasn't been touched in years.
Order, order, order! So you're telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake?
Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger?
You'd better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo.
I can't believe Clavier Gavin just said the word switcheroo.
I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Misham was.
If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham was himself a forgery. The real forger was... Oh, no. Really? Okay, 70 years ago, she was 12. That makes no damn sense.
Take that!
There can be only one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger, known as Drew Misham, is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham.
Order, order, order! Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb, even for you.
I kind of agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time.
the forger wasn't caught in that trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger.
Well, actually, that does make a certain kind of sense.
One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Well,
Fascinating. Vera Misham, you've been paying attention to the trial so far?
let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger? Drew Misham? Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared at by Fräuleins, believe me. Though they usually talk to me, too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art?
Yes.
Well, I was way off.
So the forger, Drew Misham, was you?
Yes, it was me.
What?
The court was in an uproar and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. To be continued in the next episode. To the outro! Well, that certainly isn't where I expected any of that to go. At the age of 12, Vera was producing forgeries, was sent a poison stamp, kept it in a frame on her father's desk for some reason. Then 7 years later, her father finds himself in need of a stamp and uses the poisoned one. That's contrived even for this franchise. Also, she was forging evidence 7 years ago. That's a very common time frame. Hopefully some of this mess will get cleared up when we return from recess. In the meantime, up here's a playlist of my Danganronpa V3 playthrough, and down here is a video that YouTube recommends. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!